The band was warming up. The red carpet was being rolled out. Some had dressed for a somber occasion, but the stands at the Zimbabwe National Stadium remained less than a quarter full. Those who came were true believers.
I like Harare Mugabe. I like that man. He taught us a lot, even to be firm. Stand firm. Don't be afraid.
Tell me why you came today.
Yeah, we came here to celebrate the life of the icon, former President Robert Mugabe.
The coffin, accompanied by dignitaries and relatives, was wheeled in. Robert Mugabe, Liberation War leader, President of Zimbabwe for 37 years, dead at the age of 95 after being forced from power. Foreign representatives, including a few African leaders, were here, but this didn't have the feel of a grand state occasion. Robert Mugabe was such an important historical figure, both loved and loathed. And yet this state funeral seems rather hesitant and confused. That's because of the conflict between the current Zimbabwean president and Mugabe's widow, Grace. And none of the nice words they're saying now can cover that up.
The whole continent.
President Mnangagwa's wife sat between him and Grace Mugabe, the woman he believes tried to have him killed.
Our motherland is in tears. Our region is in grief. And our continent is in sorrow. Above all, a family is stricken and in deep sorrow.
Against Grace Mugabe's wishes, her late husband will not be buried at his rural home, but in the National Heroes Acre. Not, however, for another 30 days.
He's on his journey to heaven. By the time we put him to the ground, he will have reached his destination.
Some say that his widow Grace does not want him to be buried near his first wife, the late Sally Mugabe.
I don't know about that, but however, the site is not next to Sally. It's a brand new site. Nobody has been buried there. It's just a virgin land. They are having to level it and build on that.
Sure enough, at Heroes Acre, the cemetery for those who led the liberation from white rule, they're building a new mausoleum. A few meters away, the plot next to the grave of Sally Mugabe, still seen by many as the mother of the nation, lies empty and will remain so. Back at the stadium, a 21-gun salute. It might have woken those who found the heat and long speeches just too much. Robert Mugabe's funeral was a faint echo of the pomp and circumstance he loved. How are the mighty fallen? So it all felt rather flat today. I think that if President Mugabe had been in power when he died, it would have been a massive state funeral with lots of African leaders. But as it was the men who ousted him who were organizing it. They ousted him nearly 2 years ago because he had agreed, it seems, that his young wife, Grace, should take over from him, and they were never going to allow that. So President Emerson Mnangagwa, think of him today in the stadium as you saw him. Well, he's known as the crocodile. That was his nom de guerre during the Liberation War. I think rather a lot of crocodile tears were shed today. Because, yes, they do see Robert Mugabe as an icon of the liberation struggle, as a father of the nation. And, yes, they are complicit in the killings and the cruelty that characterized his rule. But, you know, they had really had enough of him. He was 95. How can it have been so disorganized? It was as if they had never planned for this. And as for what happens next, we're told that the body tomorrow will go to Zvimba, that's his rural home. What happens in the next 30 days before he's supposed to be buried in Heroes Acre? Well, that's anyone's guess.
Thank you very much, Lindsey. Well, earlier I spoke to the Zimbabwean journalist Violet Gonda, who's been in exile from Zimbabwe for the last 20 years after she escaped former President Mugabe's rule. I began by asking her about the half-empty seats at the funeral and what this meant for the memory of Robert Mugabe.
No, I think it's a combination of a lot of things, or several things. One of it is that the funeral has gone on for a long time, and this is unusual in Zimbabwe because when someone dies, it doesn't take more than 3-4 days for the person to be buried. And Zimbabweans have got a lot of other pressing issues that they're concerned with. So I'm thinking that some who were not able to come is because of that. And then secondly, it also exposes the deep divisions within the ruling ZANU-PF party because of the infighting. Perhaps the other faction or those who are unhappy with what is happening in the ruling party decided that they don't want to attend. So it could be anything.
I mean, he's described as the father of a nation. Many Zimbabweans feel that he was an abusive father of the nation. How much forgiveness is there for him in death?
I think right now, I think the biggest issue is that what we have seen with Mugabe's death is that it's divided the society. It's like, on the one hand, those who love him will support him and they see him as a hero. But on the other hand, those who suffered, especially in the last few years, see him as a despot. So,
how would you personally remember him? Someone who was forced into exile.
I think for me now, I exercised my demons when I went to Zimbabwe last year.
Right.
And this was after I had been, I was not able to go to Zimbabwe for almost 20 years. So for me, it's no longer an issue. But for the victims who actually suffered at the hands of Robert Mugabe right now, many of them, they are not crying. They want to move on. They want food on the table. So their priority right now is not mourning that. But then, of course, he still has had support. There are a lot of people who benefited from his rule.
So even in death, he's divided the country.
Exactly.
Can the country really move on after this funeral?
It waits to be seen, because the current president right now, President Emmerson Mnangagwa, has to some extent failed to show Zimbabweans that he is different from what Mugabe did during his rule. So I think this is going to be a test for him. One of the things that he could have done, or he should do going forward, is to unite not only those in his party, but unite the nation, because Zimbabwe is the Zimbabweans are a deeply traumatized people. And national healing and reconciliation is very important right now in the country.
And it depends on individuals like him to do so. So where do you realistically see the future of the country?
Well, again, it depends on him. He has to show that he's thinking about the people. He has to revive the economy. He has to start reforms, whether it's political, media reforms. He has to show that his reign is going to be different from what we've seen before. And also, if you want to lure investors, show that you're dealing with corruption, not just this catch and release issues that we've seen in Zimbabwe right now. Put in place a land audit so that people can actually see that you're dealing with all these other problems that we had during Mugabe's rule.
And in one word, are you an optimist or a pessimist for the future of your country? One word.
I would like to be an optimist.
On that note, Violet Gonda, thanks very much.